So joining me today here at Malachut Radio, I have Drew, who is the lead singer of Rosellas, who formed in 2019. My goodness, not even that long ago, but they have done fantastically well. They are Manchester-based, influenced by the Smiths and a lot of bands that are from the 90s, all the kind of like Britpop and indie-sounding bands. They've self-produced an EP. Their debut single, Born Under a Cloud, was on that EP. We'll get to that in a moment because I've got a lot of questions about that song. Joining me is Drew Selby, the cheeky Mancunian frontman, singer, songwriter, and I can tell he also plays guitar because I can see a Fender in the background there as well. And not to mention a fellow Pink Floyd fan as well. Drew, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
That's okay. My pleasure, actually. So, yeah, I'm just going to get straight to it because I really want to know about the story behind Born Under a Cloud, because I can hear a lot of like football stuff going on in the background, and I think, football influence, maybe?
Well, like you said before, that me being the cheeky frontman singer and all that palaver, and the songwriter, I actually share the songwriting shift with the rhythm guitar player from the band Ewan. And sometimes I write songs on my own, sometimes he writes them on his own, and sometimes we come together, write them both together. But Born Under a Cloud was actually written by Ewan, and that started life off probably around like 3 years ago. And what he does is gets these ideas down on the guitar and sends me a voice memo. And I'm telling you now, the original voice memo I've got on my phone of that tune is about 8 minutes long. It's ridiculous. The guy was singing like 4 verses. There wasn't a chorus or anything. It was honestly, but it was fantastic because it was him just having a brain fart onto his guitar. You know what I mean? It was everything just going down on it. And then he got me involved. I sort of like chopped and changed a few little bits. We worked on like a bit of a solo together, got the structure of it together. I mean, it's still sitting at about 5.5 minutes long, so it's still
a long track.
But I mean, I ask him even to this day, like, what on earth are you on about in that tune, man? And he's steadfast that he won't tell me. He knows what it's about, but he shares the same view of me. And I think it's when you write a song that's about something pretty close to your heart, it's best to tell people what it's not about, because people will listen to that song and give it its own meaning and relate it to something that's happened to them. You know what I mean? And that's when it will stick in their head. So he hasn't told me what it is.
The interesting thing that you guys have done that is the apt timing of that song coming out as a single and an EP, because obviously COVID struck and anyone that's being born now, you don't say anymore. But yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you as a fellow musician. I think if you can write something that can have 100 different meanings to 100 different people, then you've got it, and it's got a good hook. I walk around my flat humming it all the time because it's one of my favourites.
It's that driven drum beat that it starts off with. It's just proper like that song, and that's why it was the first like main single we put out. Like you said, we did we did 3 EPs before that. They were all like the stuff that I produced. But actually, just to correct you before, when we went on and did Born Under a Cloud, that's when we worked with our producer Oliver Shillito. So you'll notice a bit of the difference. Like Born Under a Cloud sounds mental. It's like proper professional. My mixes aren't quite there yet. I'm getting there, but it's a belter of a tune, man. And the way Oliver helped us capture it and record it,
it is a belter of a tune
to kick it off for us.
Definitely one of my favourites by far. I play it a lot on Get to Know Them Before Fame and Fortune because it is just it's one of my favourites. I can't get away from it. I've played it every single show since we were sent it, and even before you were like pick of the week, I'm playing that tune on my show. I think it was like a week before, and I was handed the EP, and I was like, who are they? Had a look, and I was like, I couldn't stop playing it because I was like, this takes me right back. Like, look, in honor of the 90s, look, I've done my hair like 90s style today, okay? In honor of like chatting with you, because it's like going back in time. Every time I listen to a track, and I was there, I was there in the 90s. I was a teen at the time. And it is like listening to like the very first time I sort of heard Arctic Monkeys or Happy Mondays, or there's a real sense of this is a track from a nostalgic era when I listen to that EP, and it is very, very well produced. And I know you've mentioned that you self-produce a lot of tracks. So what is your self-producing process that you go through? Obviously, you know, putting Born Under a Cloud and the EP on the burner that you've done professionally, but your personal way of producing.
Well, even for like Born Under a Cloud and the other, the B side on it, maybe twice, any song that either I write or me and Ewan or Ewan writes on his own, we always come to my gaff, or I do it here on my own, and we get it down in demo form because of my studies at uni and high school and stuff like that. I know how to use Logic, which is like a recording software. I've got a home studio, as it were. It's, you know, 2 speakers and a computer.
It's
but
all
it's
on
enough.
PC these days.
Yeah, it's enough with like a little audio interface to record in, like guitars and bass. Luis will come round and throw down some keyboard. We'll get either some drums recorded at Mark's house or I'll program some in. We just kind of mix and match whatever we can, and I'll mix it into a form. It's not really like a demo. It's kind of like a pleasant listening demo, like a good demo, if you know what I'm getting at. One that you can whack on in the car and it'd hold up against other stuff you're listening to. And once we've got the songs to that point, then we just sit on them for as long as we need. We listen to them all. Like, I listened to Born Under a Cloud probably like 1,000 times while I was mixing that before we'd even gone to the bloody studio to get it properly done, because you just want to be certain that the melody's right, the lyrics feel right, the whole vibe of the song. And then we basically took that to Oliver with a skeleton and he just fleshed it out and made it immense, you know, what it is now. But it pretty much, yeah, it always starts for me. I'll come up with an idea on the guitar, or Ewan will. We'll get the guitar down first, program some like shakers or tambourines in or something, and Luis will put his keyboard on. It's a very like step-by-step methodical process, you know what I mean? And we're fortunate enough now in this era for me to be able to sit here in my PJs and make a song. I couldn't do that in the 90s, you know what I mean? You'd have to get someone to pay for you to do it. You'd have to get off your arse, you know, that's the first part of it, but I can do it sitting here, so, you know, we're lucky, but we're making use of it as best we can.
Do you know, I agree though, because that is what made me not want to record back sort of like late 90s, early 2000s. I didn't want to do any recording because it is a bloody long process.
Yeah.
You know, so I was a going out, you know, gigging kind of girl with the bands kind of thing, and I did loads of different kind of like cover work with different bands and that kind of thing. But now it's dead easy. You're right. You can sit in your PJs, you know, no one knows that you've produced that track in your PJs, and people are even selling self-produced tracks, aren't they, in this day and age? But
yeah, the amount of like bedroom artists there are is ridiculous. Like, there's so many of them. I mean, like, I've never personally listened to him, but someone that always does is one of my mates, and he tells me, like, I think Rex Orange County was like, or at least he started as like a bedroom artist or something like that. And I've listened to some of his tunes just to hear, you know, what his production's like, and it's insane. Like, you can do whatever you bloody want with it because the resources are just there, aren't they?
They absolutely are. They're at your fingertips. But I mean, what made you choose to go down the route of now going down the professional recording route rather than self-producing? What suddenly sparked that after kind of doing a load of self-produced stuff?
Probably because the guy that is our producer, Oliver Shillito, he's actually my family. He's one of my cousins, and back when I was like 16, 17, he helped me produce like a little EP of my own, and like I listened back to it, and the songwriting is a bloody speck on the arse of what we make in the band now. But you know what I mean? It's like, it's all a process, isn't it? So he helped me make a little EP when I was younger, and I put that out and whatnot. And he was kind of growing himself as a producer at the time, and then over the years, I just started putting more and more demos in front of him and saying like, look, I've got this band going, here's a tune. And it's funny because as a mixer and a masterer, he started in like heavy metal and he's branched out since then to like acoustic Ben Howardy kind of stuff, our kind of like indie stuff. He does like a bit of psychedelic, he does bloody dance. Like, the guy's got his finger in a lot of pies and he's very bloody good at what he does. So I
might have to book him at some point. You've really talked him up there.
Well, I thought to myself, like, I may as well self-produce these demos as best as I can do them so that he has something to work with. But then the amount of knowledge and professionalism that guy has, and he's got his own home studio, which is kitted out wall to wall. may as well make use of it. And he's my family as well, so he'll never see me done wrong. And he genuinely believes in us as a band and in us as a group of lads. You know what I mean? He's not like a manager or a mentor, but it's about surrounding yourself with people that are positive energies. You know what I mean? And want to see you do well instead of just profiting off you and taking your money and giving you a product because bollocks to it, I'm getting paid at the end of the day anyway. He's not one of them. You know, he's worth his salt. So yeah, it's just kind of over the years he's got more and more involved, and we've got to a point now where you know the formula works pretty well.
And he sounds like he's done a superb job, from what I can hear. And I think it does really show, actually, you can tell that he's actually put his heart into it, because you can listen to a lot of tracks and you think, actually, you can tell that that producer's done that for the money, because they've kind of whacked it out as quickly as they can onto the next one. I've got a couple of friends who are music producers, one in particular, he's starting up his own studio at the moment. And it takes a lot of hard work. You've got to really believe in the artists these days that you work with, because if you don't, there's no point in working with them. So yeah, absolutely. You can hear that. You can definitely hear that. It does make a difference, doesn't it? I want to know,
it's funny
why
you say
90s music? Why did you pick 90s indie as your genre as a band? What was it, like a meeting that you guys got together and you went, oh, hang on, let's do something 90s, or did it just evolve?
It's primarily come from the fact that me and Ewan write the tunes, and that, you know, we share a lot of differences in our songwriting inspirations and who we listen to. I think he listens to a lot of Dross. He probably thinks the same with me. But we find common
Sorry, did you
ground
say
on
Bros?
Dross.
Same thing.
We find common ground on, like, I don't know, as soon as I became mates with him, like, I met the guy on the train to a Blossoms gig, and he was a couple of years above me in school. So straight away, we hit it off talking about Blossoms, and then obviously from that, we got onto things like Oasis, the Stone Roses, the Verve. He tells me he's a big fan of, like, the Lars from, I think they're from Liverpool, and, like,
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
the Smiths as well. He's massively into the Smiths. I'm
Love
not
the
as
Smiths.
much. Yeah, like, a lot of people say, like, the people that I've met that love the Smiths, like, love the Smiths. You know what I mean? It's like a proper adoration. And I think with him, he does idolise Morrissey for his lyrical content, stuff like that, which I can't fault him for. I think some of the Smiths songs are a bit bloody depressing at times.
Oh, they're very depressing.
Every
Very,
band
very
has that, though.
depressing.
You know what I mean? Everyone has, like, the different avenues and whatnot. But yeah, it's just because me and you write tunes, A, that we want to listen to, and B, we write them from the back of our minds where we've subconsciously been hearing, like, Oasis and all this kind of stuff battering around for years. So we never sat down and thought to ourselves, right, we want to sound like the 90s. We just sat down and thought, we want to make what we want to make and what we'd like to listen to. And if someone tells us that that throws them back to 1995, thinking of, like, Manchester music, then that's great. You know what I mean? Someone might tell us it throws them forward in time to 2033. Find a magic carpet for there. You don't know, do you? It don't matter how people take the music in different ways, but it's validation for us that even someone like yourself says that, like, Born Under a Cloud is reminiscent of that time, because that's sort of what we were subliminally doing through it. We knew it sounded a bit like it. We weren't doing it on purpose, but it's good.
It's the chords, Drew. It's the chords. Yeah. You've got those absolutely spot on, that real 90s sound.
Ewan came up with those chords. It's a baller.
Yeah, he's done a good job of that. So particularly then, you personally, your influences, who really influenced you vocally, and also, what kind of bands do you like that have inspired you?
I think with me, I split it into kind of two halves, because a massive side of it for me, and, like, the reason why I started self-producing music and making stuff is because, like, ever since I was a kid, I've always recorded, like, little ideas and sounds. Like, I always started on the music. Lyrics didn't come for me until I was about 16, 17. I used to put it off because I just hated writing them. So musically, I take, like, before we started the interview, I was talking to you about Pink Floyd. Like, when I was growing up in my house, my mum or my dad would always either have on the Chili Peppers or Pink Floyd.
Yes,
and I remember that from the age of about 6. It's pretty mad to think like you'd be saying to some kid's mum like, "Why are you playing him psychedelic music when he's about 6?" But it pays off because I was hearing certain sounds and I developed an interest in, like what's that chord or what's that? Is that a keyboard? Is it a bloody? I don't know if it was Pink Floyd. It's probably a pair of spoons. But the point is, when it comes to like the music side of it, I take massive influence from like Pink Floyd and actually a lot from Ben Howard as well, because in his first album he was like quite folky, it was a bit poppy like radio bangers and whatnot, but in his second and latest albums there's like elements of psych in there and acoustic psych, and it's nice and moody and he just focuses on melody, and I think that's a lot where I get like my musical influence from. um, in terms of like lyrically and vocally, that sort of started when I found out who Ian Brown was and the Stone Roses, and
Yeah.
my mum took me to see him at the Etihad in 2016. And from there, off the back of that, I found out about Oasis, then the Verve. Like Richard Ashcroft is probably my
Oh
favourite
yeah.
vocalist of all time, shortly followed by maybe like Liam. And then I've got influences from my mum and my sister as well, from like Eddie Vedder, from Pearl Jam, Kurt Cobain, from Nirvana. So I don't try and sound like any one particular person, but I just know that when I'm listening to like Eddie Vedder's voice or Liam Gallagher's voice and they're putting like pure passion and grit into it, it sounds good. Especially for the genre we're in, like rock music. You can't be wimping about going
You
all
can't
like
do it by
falsetto
halves.
on this all the time. No, you
You
got to
cannot do
just
rock by halves, can you? You've
no,
really got to do it full pelt. I mean, I
yeah,
remember when I was gigging, if you don't do full pelt, I mean, I used to jump around on the stage like crazy because we did very, very, kind of we did classic rock and heavy rock
yeah,
covers, and you're jumping around the stage like crazy because you cannot do it by halves. You can't do a half
no.
measure. You've got to give your all, it's blood, sweat, tears, and your soul, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it's a
So,
passionate kind of music, a passionate genre, and people want to see that. Like the key factor is when you're playing live. Anyone can sing good on a record because you get 50 takes, 50 layers of it if you want, and 50 bloody auto tuners. But when you're on stage doing a gig, if you come off stage and someone says like, "Wow, your voice was on it," like that was a great gig, that's all the commendation you need for it. Because as long as it holds up live in a wall of guitar and a wall of drums and cymbals like rock music is, it's got to cut through. So yeah,
yeah.
I just try and like keep it powerful and passionate, I guess,
Yeah,
where I
which
can.
you do, which you're doing really well. So I know you have just finished recording your new single called Damaged. How's
Yeah,
that gone?
no, it was brilliant. It was great. I think we got into the studio for that like in between. There was like 2 lockdowns and there was like a little grace period in between. And we got into the studio, got it all recorded pretty quickly. Did the drums in a couple of days, and then we were at Oliver's studio laying down like guitars and vocals and keys and stuff like that. But again, like I said before, we'd had those tunes as demos for, I think Damaged was like 2.5 years old, and The Edge and Inside came about like last year. So we all knew exactly what they sounded like, what we wanted to play. So for us, it was more like I like being in the studio because it's just pure creativity all the time. You know what I mean? Every like Luis is great for it, man. He'll just be dabbling about on the keyboard, and he's just one of those guys that's always in tune. He's like that well trained that he's just playing in key to like a bloody bird outside.
Is he
And but
classically trained? Did he
he
like
is,
study
yeah, yeah,
classical?
yeah. He got his grade 8 when he was about 4. I have no idea actually when he got
You can
it, but
hear it. You can actually hear it. I mean, I've got a real ear for it. I can tell if someone's classically trained, and I
yeah,
kept thinking I must ask because it's been niggling me. So
he is.
yeah, there
No,
we
he is.
go. Satisfied.
Yeah, it brings that element to our music that I don't think a lot of bands have. Like, you listen to Dire Straits, for example. Like, there's a lot of guitar in there, there's a lot of piano there and keyboard, but I don't think they ever really go like hand in hand at the forefront of the tunes. You know what I mean? They're always kind of like dabbling about a bit, and I was sort of thinking to myself, I want to make a sound for a band where it's like a combination of the Verve and Oasis and all this like Manchester guitar and melody, but throw some bloody piano in there like dead heavy right up in the front. And he's someone that is competent enough to play anything. You know what I mean? So it just works. I think we found a bit of a sweet spot with it at the moment.
You're very lucky to find someone that is able to do that. I mean, I remember we
Yeah,
had a drummer that could do anything at one point, and then we had a
Mm.
keyboardist who just couldn't do anything, you know. So it's, you're very lucky to find the formula that early on, you know, and many bands struggle with that, finding the formula of those people that can play. I mean, even if you look at bands like The Who, when they lost Keith Moon, who was a epic drummer, you
Yeah.
know, they replaced him with somebody else, and Charlie, who they replaced him with, they couldn't get used to. They just couldn't get used to his style. You know, you
Mm.
fast forward now, and they've had to get used to Zach Starkey, who was actually trained by Keith Moon as a drummer.
Yeah.
But he's Ringo Starr's son, you know, and
That's
he's,
where
you
I've
know,
heard the
40
name
years
before.
younger than them.
I was going to ask you where I'd heard that name before. I mean,
Yeah, yeah. So
I've
yeah,
listened
I
to a
mean,
bit of The Who since I was a kid, but I was never properly into it, so I didn't really know what happened after Keith Moon wasn't around. So it's interesting you say that, because it does
yeah,
happen. You're right, bands spend a lot of time like deciding how to sound, and it depends on factors like people not pulling the weight, someone shredding too much, all this shit. But
yeah.
yeah, I think we've got a pretty decent thing going.
It's about getting the balance, isn't it, really?
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
about, you know,
absolutely.
playing to your talents, isn't it, really, as a band, which I think you guys are doing. And I think you've done a really great job so far, really.
Mm,
But, you know, COVID has changed everything now. And if
mm.
we are permanently changed, what is the future for Rosellas? How do
Oh,
you feel that's going to
God
look?
knows. That's a big question. Well, I think the number one thing we can't wait to come back is face-to-face gigs, because like every musician you'll ever interview says to you, that feeling is like a drug. You know, when people are singing your words and just going mental, and like that's the thing that we put as paramount above everything.
Having the crowd in the palm of your hand as a
Absolutely,
vocalist.
absolutely,
Yeah.
and just having complete and utter control over a room. You know what I mean? But
Like the
it's
Force,
looking
isn't it?
like,
It's like Star
yeah,
Wars, the Jedi
yeah,
Force
you're
thing.
up there like a Jedi Master,
Yeah,
mate.
yeah,
But it's
yeah.
looking the way that that's not going to come back for a while, and it's all going online. So we were lucky enough to get involved with a project by like a company or organisation called Everybody Belongs Here, where they put on this online charity gig that we're a part of, and I think Sam Smith, Blossoms, Fontaines DC, Newton Faulkner, and then about 500 million other bands like us are
So we've
playing
got the
on
big
it.
names in there
Yeah,
already.
yeah, man. There are a few big names in there, so we're looking forward to it. And we went and pre-recorded a little set to it, a few tunes at the Met in Bury, and then they're going to sell tickets for it. It's all for charity and that, but then everyone's going to be able to tune in and watch it. And while thousands of people might see us that way, and it'd be great, I'd much prefer 4,000 heads sitting right in front of me now. You know what I mean? It doesn't ever compare, but everyone is in the same boat, and everyone's just got to get on with it and really
Take
just,
what you can, don't you, really, in
yeah,
times like this?
exactly. And if that's
Yeah.
the way it's going, we're up for getting involved with whatever we can. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? I mean, socially distanced gigs, like, they don't really tick on my belly that much, because I just can't imagine the atmosphere being there. You know what I mean? Having to sit on a couch with one person round you here, and then, well, 50 metres down that way, there's a couple more. You can't even go and get a beer when you want. It's,
If they're anything like one of the first gigs I played when I lived in Leicester, we played at a pub called Duffy's Bar. And we had 3 people in the audience that night because the owner forgot to advertise the gig. So
Jesus.
if they're anything like that, no thanks.
Yeah.
I don't
Hey,
blame you.
every band does that. We've done gigs to the sound guy before, and just the sound guy. 6 people in the room, of which we were 5. So it gets that way sometimes.
Do you have that mindset of when that has happened? Because the mindset I had was, well, we'll just treat this as a paid rehearsal. We're getting paid to be here. We've got free beer at the bar. You
Yeah.
know, let's just treat it as a paid rehearsal. And we literally just went all out to kind of rehearse for our next gig, basically. Do
Yeah.
you guys treat it the same when you've had that?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, if there's a rider involved, then it's just a free night of drinking, and you don't even have to perform very well because there's no one there to criticise you. But
Mm.
yeah, you got to treat everything, like every second you play, as practice in some way, shape, or form.
Mm.
And it's not often that, especially when you've got 5 lads in a band, like you can't always rehearse all the time because everyone's got jobs in uni and girlfriends and all sorts of stuff going on. So at least when you're there and you're all on stage and you set up, who gives one how many people are in the audience? You know what I mean? If there's 100, fantastic. But if there's one, don't matter. We're still going to do the gig. You still got to play it, and you get the practice in, don't you? Because eventually you'll get to the point where you can't do a gig to one person at all. Every gig there'll be 5,000 people there, and you cannot make a mistake. So unless you don't practice your arse off at this point, you're going to be sort of bollocks a bit later.
It's the groundwork, isn't it, really?
Absolutely.
The groundwork that counts at the end of the day. And that's what keeps most musicians in the business for a long, long time, that groundwork. You know, so it's really good to hear you say that. Yeah, I mean, it's really good. I heard that you did have a gig planned for July. So was that the online gig that you've been talking about, or was that something else that was planned in July?
It's actually not. The online gig is happening in a couple of weeks, 28th, 29th of January.
Great. We need the details of that then.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know I kind of brushed the surface with it, didn't I? And didn't give much away. Yeah, it's all on our social medias, like we've posted about on Instagram, and there's ticket links out there. Tickets are on Dice FM. I think if you just type in music feeds, it's a music feeds event, so it'll come up there. But the one, I think it's about 10, 15 quid for that, and it gets you access to like both days. But it's all for charity, so you know, nothing holding you back. Get involved. What else are you going to be doing other than sitting at home on your backside? May as well watch a gig. Gulliver's is the 10th of July, and that is a gig that we have put on ourselves. Like, we've hired out the venue ourselves. There's no one promoting it for us. We're doing it all ourselves. We're going to put one of our mates on the doors. You know what I mean? It's a bit like a grassroots type thing, because then we get to share in all the profits. But yeah, that was originally meant to be, I think, like last September, and then it got postponed to like April. Then it was to August, then it was to like January. So it's been postponed and put back a hell of a lot. But now, hopefully, that's going to go ahead in July.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, and there's still tickets available for that. Not many. We're getting there slowly.
How do we get those tickets? That's what everyone's going to want to know, because when I play this interview out, they're going to hear your song, one of your songs, straight after this interview and before, you know. So they're going to want to know, where do they get those tickets from? How?
You can get them on our Facebook. It's listed on our events, and there's a ticket link on there. You can also get it on the Gulliver's website, Castle Eagle Gulliver's, and you can also get it on ticketweb.co.uk if you type in Rosellas. And actually, if you go on our Spotify, there's a little link to it on there, like on the live section. So yeah, hopefully that's enough. You should be able to
Facebook, Spotify, Gulliver's.
Yeah, it's everywhere. You'll probably see it in your local newsagents tomorrow morning when you walk in.
Drew Selby, thank you so much for joining us here on Malacot Radio. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you'll come back, all of you, when COVID has died down. And I can't really say when COVID is over, but, you know, all of you, it would be lovely to kind of meet the rest of the lads and, you know, maybe even see you at a gig.
Absolutely. I mean, none of them are quite this funny, so, you know, might not be entertaining, but, you know, it'll still be good to come down there. But you should get yourself down to a gig, for sure.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd absolutely love to. If I can make it in Gulliver's, because Manchester's not that far from Mansfield, so, you know, I'll be there if I can. It's about an hour and 40 minutes away, so I'll be there if I can. But yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure, and yeah, hopefully we'll speak to you soon.
All right, nice one. Thank you.